This half term, we are going to start by studying George Orwell's Animal Farm. This will contribute to paper 2 in your GCSE examination, Modern Text, section A. Animal Farm by George Orwell uses animal characters to satirise events and people in Russia following the revolution in 1917. A satire is the use of exaggeration and humour, often to criticise politics. In Animal Farm, George Orwell uses animals on a farm to criticise the communist leadership of the Soviet Union after the Russian Revolution in 1917. He believes that Stalin and his followers lost their ideals. George Orwell's real name was Eric Arthur Blair. He was born in 1903 and died in 1950. Although we know that George Orwell was born into a wealthy family, and he even attended some of the most expensive private schools like Eton, we also know that after years of struggling and trying to become a writer in Paris and London, George Orwell lived as a down and out. That's a person with no job or place to live. He therefore understood the troubles of the lower classes and was distrustful of people who had power. George Orwell wrote the first draft of Animal Farm after his experiences fighting for the Republicans in the Spanish Civil War. The Republicans were fighting for an elected government as opposed to being under the rule of a king or queen. That was the system that existed in Spain at the time. The nationalists were fighting to keep the king and queen in power. George Orwell's experiences living as a down and out in Paris and London and fighting for the Republicans in the Spanish Civil War secured his ideas that people in power were greedy. They did not care about the poor, and Orwell himself, of course, experienced being poor, so he could sympathise with this. He believed that there should be a better, more equal world for people to live in. Orwell wrote Animal Farm as a reaction and a response to his experiences during the Spanish Civil War, and this book is without a doubt intended to refer to the Russian Revolution and society following the events of 1917. In 1900, Tsar Nicholas II, the Russian king, ruled with absolute power. This autocracy was resented, particularly because he and his family lived in luxury while there was so much poverty in the rest of the country. A number of events then followed which led to increased unrest amongst Russian society. In 1904, Russia suffered humiliating defeats in a war against Japan. This led to protests and calls for reform. In 1905, after Bloody Sunday, Nicholas II allowed a Duma, or legislature for the people. This meant that he allowed for some elected representatives. In 1914, Russia entered World War I and quickly suffered heavy losses in major defeats to Germany along the Eastern Front. This led to 2 revolutions in Russia, one in March and one in November of 1917. The first saw the abdication of the Tsar. This means that Tsar Nicholas II gave up his throne. A provisional government was then put in place. However, it was still composed of politicians from the Russian Imperial Society. Then, a process which started in October 1917 saw more radical politicians called the Bolsheviks, who were led by Lenin, becoming the government, and the Tsar and his family were at that point imprisoned and then executed in 1918. The Bolshevik leader at the time was Lenin. They supported the teachings of Karl Marx, who provided the Communist Manifesto in Das Kapital, a book criticising capitalism. In a perfect world, Orwell would have been happy with a communist regime. It would have meant common ownership, total equality, and a classless society. He himself was a socialist, believing in the equal access to resources and neither public or direct worker control of resources and productivity. However, reflecting upon the society that had been instilled within Russia, Orwell was able to understand that this had become more of a dictatorship, a total shift of power, as opposed to creating equality. This was not what Orwell had intended or wanted, and this was what he therefore criticised. As a result, the novella Animal Farm can be seen as an allegory. An allegory is when you use one thing to comment upon another. In this example, George Orwell uses the animals on the farm and the events that occur, such as the Battle of the Cowshed, to reflect the Russian Revolution. The animals on the farm are therefore representative of the key historical and political figures involved, those of whom we've looked at, such as Leon Trotsky, Stalin, and Lenin. And the events that occur in the novella reflect those that occurred in the Russian Revolution. Using the notes in this video and your own knowledge, I would now like for you to answer the following question. How does Orwell use Animal Farm as an allegory? Please can you write one paragraph in response to this question? I'm expecting a minimum of 6 sentences within this paragraph. That means that I should see 6 full stops in your writing. Please remember to include keywords such as allegory and refer to the events that I have described in this video. Please replay the video as many times as you feel you need to in order to answer this question successfully. As I said, I'm expecting a minimum of 6 sentences. Good luck.